I watched through my living room window as my neighbor, Patricia Norton, leaned over my freshly planted begonias and snapped the stems clean off with her bare hands, then ground the petals into the dirt with the heel of her designer shoe. My name is Quinton Garrison, and I had just moved into the Riverside Meadows subdivision in Scottsdale, Arizona, 3 months earlier. The development was one of those pristine cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every lawn looked exactly the same. Every mailbox was regulation black, and the homeowners association ruled with an iron fist. I had known going in that the HOA was strict, but I figured as long as I kept my property neat and followed the rules, everything would be fine. What I did not anticipate was Patricia Norton, the HOA president, who seemed to have made it her personal mission to make my life miserable from the moment I pulled up in my moving truck. The flower incident was not the first problem I had encountered with Patricia. It started small with passive-aggressive notes in my mailbox about my grass being a 1/4 inch too long, complaints that my garbage cans were visible from the street for 20 minutes past the acceptable time, and demands that I repaint my front door because the shade of tan I had chosen was apparently not on the approved color list, even though it matched perfectly with every other door on the block. But this was different. This was not petty rule enforcement. This was outright vandalism of my property. I rushed outside, my heart pounding with anger and disbelief. Patricia had already scurried back across the street to her own immaculate yard, where she was now pretending to inspect her own flower beds, as if nothing had happened. The begonias I had spent $200 on at the nursery last weekend lay in ruins, their bright pink and white blooms crushed into muddy pulp. "Patricia," I called out, my voice carrying across the quiet suburban street. "What the hell did you just do to my flowers?" She turned slowly, her face arranged in an expression of perfect innocence. Patricia was 52 years old according to the neighborhood gossip, with blonde hair that was clearly professionally maintained, tennis clothes that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and a perpetual look of superiority that made my blood boil. She placed one manicured hand on her chest in mock surprise. "Excuse me. I have no idea what you are talking about, Quinton. I have been tending to my own garden all morning." "I just watched you destroy my flowers through my window," I said, walking toward her with my phone in hand, wishing I had thought to record what I had witnessed. "You walked right over there, snapped them off, and stomped on them." Patricia's face hardened, her fake concern evaporating instantly. "That is a serious accusation. I would be very careful about making defamatory statements if I were you. The HOA takes neighborhood harmony very seriously, and false accusations could result in fines or even legal action against you." "False accusations. I literally just saw you do it." "Can you prove it?" She raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her tone dripping with condescension. "Because from where I am standing, it looks like you simply failed to properly care for your landscaping, and now you are trying to blame someone else for your own negligence. Perhaps if you spent less time making unfounded accusations and more time learning proper gardening techniques, your plants would not be dying." I felt my fists clench at my sides. The sheer audacity of her lying to my face while the evidence of what she had done was scattered across my front yard was almost too much to handle. "Those flowers were perfectly healthy until you destroyed them. I think you need to calm down, Quinton. You are making a scene, and disturbing the peace is actually a violation of our HOA covenant. I would hate to have to write you up for that as well." She smiled sweetly, but her eyes were cold and calculating. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have actual responsibilities to attend to." She turned and walked into her house, leaving me standing there fuming in the middle of the street. My neighbor 2 houses down, an elderly man named Robert, had come out to water his flowers and gave me a sympathetic look. "She got you too, huh?" he said, shaking his head. "Patricia has run off half a dozen families in the past 2 years. Most people just sell and leave rather than deal with her." "She destroyed my property. That has to be illegal." Robert shrugged. "Probably is, but good luck proving it. She is too smart to get caught. The woman has cameras all over her own property pointing at everyone else's homes, always watching for violations, but she is careful when she does something herself. My advice: start documenting everything and maybe think about whether this neighborhood is worth the headache." I thanked Robert for his input and went back inside, my mind racing. I was not going to let Patricia drive me out of my home. I had saved for years to afford this house, and I was not about to let some petty tyrant force me to sell at a loss just because she enjoyed tormenting people. But Robert was right about one thing: I needed documentation. That afternoon, I drove to an electronics store in downtown Scottsdale and spent $400 on a trail camera system. The kind hunters used to monitor game, with motion sensors and night vision capabilities. The cameras were small, weatherproof, and could record high-definition video for weeks on a single set of batteries. I was going to catch Patricia in the act, and when I did, I would have all the evidence I needed to file a police report. I spent the rest of Sunday strategically placing cameras around my property. One pointed at the front flower beds, another at the side yard, and a third covering my backyard. I disguised them carefully among the landscaping and tree branches, making sure they were not visible from the street or from Patricia's house. If she came back to cause more damage, I would have her on video. Monday morning, I woke up to find that someone had ripped up all the grass sod I had laid down along my front walkway the previous week. Patches of expensive turf had been torn up and scattered across my driveway, leaving ugly brown dirt exposed underneath. I immediately checked the trail camera footage from my phone using the wireless app. The camera had captured everything in crystal clear high-definition video. At 2:30 in the morning, Patricia Norton had crept across the street in dark clothing, spent 15 minutes systematically destroying my newly laid sod, and then crept back home. I sat at my kitchen table watching the footage over and over again, my anger mixing with a sense of vindication. I had her. The video clearly showed her face, her actions, and the deliberate nature of the vandalism. This was not some accident or misunderstanding. This was criminal mischief, pure and simple. I downloaded the video files and made multiple backup copies, then called the Scottsdale Police Department non-emergency line. The dispatcher told me an officer would come by sometime that afternoon to take my statement. While I waited, I took detailed photographs of the damage and calculated the cost of replacing the sod, which came to roughly $350. Officer Martinez arrived around 3 in the afternoon, a professional woman in her mid-30s who listened patiently as I explained the situation. I showed her the destroyed sod, the ruined flower beds from the day before, and then pulled up the video footage on my laptop. "This is pretty clear-cut," Officer Martinez said after watching the video twice. "That is definitely criminal mischief. The damage exceeds $250, which makes it a Class 1 misdemeanor in Arizona. I will need to take a copy of this footage and your statement. We will contact Miss Norton and proceed from there." "What happens next?" I asked. "I will go speak with her now and get her side of the story. Given that you have video evidence, she will likely be cited or arrested depending on her cooperation. You will also be able to pursue this through civil court for restitution if you want to recover the cost of the damages." Officer Martinez took my formal statement, made a copy of the video files, and headed across the street to Patricia's house. I watched from my window as Patricia answered the door, her expression shifting from pleasant surprise to shock to outrage as Officer Martinez spoke with her. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes, with Patricia gesturing wildly and her voice rising loud enough that I could hear her indignant tone even from inside my house. Finally, Officer Martinez handed Patricia what looked like a citation, spoke a few more words, and returned to her patrol car. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Officer Martinez. "I cited Miss Norton for criminal mischief," she explained. "She denied everything, of course, claimed the video must be doctored or that it was not really her, but the evidence is pretty clear. She has a court date scheduled for 3 weeks from now. You will receive a notice about whether you need to appear as a witness. In the meantime, I would recommend keeping those cameras running and documenting any further incidents." "Thank you, officer." "No problem. And Mr. Garrison, I have dealt with HOA disputes before, and they can get ugly. Be careful and keep documenting everything." I thanked her again and hung up, feeling a mix of satisfaction and apprehension. I had won this round, but something told me Patricia was not going to take this lying down. I was right. That evening, I received a certified letter from the Riverside Meadows HOA Board of Directors. The letter, signed by Patricia Norton in her capacity as HOA president, informed me that I was being fined $500 for unapproved security camera installation, and that I had 7 days to remove the cameras from my property or face additional daily fines of $50. I read the letter 3 times, my jaw clenched in frustration. The HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions document I had received when I purchased the house was 147 pages of dense legal text, but I had read through it carefully before moving in. I pulled out my copy and searched through it again. There was a section about security systems, but it only required that any cameras not be visible from the street and not point at neighboring properties. My trail cameras were hidden in landscaping and trees, and they only recorded my own property. I drafted a response letter pointing out that my cameras complied with all HOA regulations and that the fine was baseless. I also mentioned that I found it highly suspicious that the HOA president was fining me for security cameras just hours after being cited by police for vandalizing my property. I sent the letter via certified mail the next morning. 2 days later, I received another letter from the HOA, this time informing me that my response had been reviewed and rejected, and that the fines would stand. Furthermore, I was now being fined an additional $300 for having a non-regulation garden hose visible from the street, and $200 for a discolored patch in my front lawn, which was of course the destroyed sod that Patricia herself had ripped up. I realized then that Patricia was going to weaponize the HOA against me, using her position as president to bury me in fines and violations, until I either gave up and moved or went bankrupt fighting her. It was a strategy that had apparently worked for her in the past. If Robert's comments were any indication, I needed help. I spent that evening researching Arizona HOA law and found the name of an attorney in Phoenix who specialized in homeowner association disputes. Her name was Jennifer Caldwell, and her website was full of testimonials from people who had successfully fought back against abusive HOA boards. I called her office first thing Wednesday morning and explained my situation. "I see this kind of thing all the time," Jennifer said when we met in her office that afternoon. She was a sharp woman in her 40s with glasses and an air of competent authority. "HOA board members, especially presidents, sometimes abuse their power to target residents they do not like. The good news is that Arizona law actually provides pretty strong protections for homeowners. The bad news is that fighting back can be expensive and time-consuming. "I have got video evidence of her vandalizing my property," I said, showing her the trail camera footage. "And now she is retaliating by hitting me with bogus fines." Jennifer watched the video, nodding slowly. "This is excellent evidence. The criminal case against her will help, but we should also file a civil suit for harassment and abuse of HOA authority. I can also send a cease and desist letter to the HOA board demanding they rescind these improper fines. If they refuse, we can take it before a judge." "How much is this going to cost me?" "My retainer is $2,500, and I bill at $250 per hour. But if we win, which I think we will given this evidence, we can pursue recovery of legal fees from Miss Norton personally and possibly from the HOA itself. Arizona law allows for attorney fee shifting in cases of bad faith HOA enforcement." I thought about my savings account and the emergency fund I had set aside. This was going to hurt financially, but letting Patricia continue to torment me would hurt even more. "Let's do it." Jennifer drafted a cease and desist letter that afternoon, outlining all of Patricia's illegal actions and demanding that the HOA immediately rescind all fines against me. She sent it via certified mail and email to both Patricia and the other 4 members of the HOA board of directors. Over the next week, things escalated. Patricia apparently convinced 2 of the other board members to back her up, and they sent a response letter refusing to rescind the fines and threatening to place a lien on my property if I did not pay within 30 days. Meanwhile, I continued to capture Patricia on my trail cameras committing various acts of vandalism. She poured motor oil on my lawn, creating a toxic dead patch. She scratched my car with her keys while it was parked in my driveway. She even threw a rock through my front window at 4 in the morning. Each time, I documented everything, filed police reports, and provided the video evidence to Officer Martinez. Patricia was cited 3 more times, and on the 4th incident involving the broken window, she was actually arrested and spent a night in jail before posting bail. The neighborhood was in an uproar. Some residents, tired of Patricia's tyrannical rule, started speaking out in support of me. Others, loyal to Patricia or afraid of becoming her next target, sided with her and began a whisper campaign, claiming I was a troublemaker who was destroying the neighborhood's peace. The monthly HOA meeting in mid-November became a battleground. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a bland beige building with folding chairs and fluorescent lights. About 40 residents showed up, which was apparently triple the normal attendance. Patricia sat at the head table with the other board members, her expression tight and controlled. Jennifer Caldwell sat next to me in the front row, her briefcase full of documentation. Patricia called the meeting to order and immediately tried to move past the standard agenda items to new business. But Robert, my elderly neighbor, stood up and demanded to address the board. "I have lived in Riverside Meadows for 8 years, Robert said, his voice shaking slightly but determined. "And I have watched Patricia Norton abuse her authority as president time and time again. She has harassed residents, filed bogus violations, and driven good people out of this neighborhood. Now we have video evidence of her vandalizing Quinton Garrison's property, and instead of stepping down, she is doubling down and trying to retaliate against him. This is unacceptable." Several other residents murmured in agreement. A woman named Sarah, who lived 4 houses down from me, stood up next. Patricia sent me a violation notice last year because my Halloween decorations were up 1 day past the approved date. 1 day. And the fine was $200. I paid it because I was afraid of what she would do if I fought back. But this has gone too far. If she is willing to vandalize someone's property and lie about it, she is not fit to be HOA president. Patricia's face was red with anger. This meeting is not a forum for baseless attacks on my character. Quinton Garrison has been a problem resident since the day he moved in, constantly violating HOA rules and causing disruption. The violations and fines are all legitimate and documented. Jennifer stood up smoothly, cutting off Patricia before she could continue. Miss Norton, I am Jennifer Caldwell, attorney for Mr. Garrison. I have sent you and this board multiple cease and desist letters regarding the improper fines and harassment of my client. I have also filed a formal complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate regarding HOA misconduct. Furthermore, my client has video evidence of you personally vandalizing his property on 6 separate occasions, and you are currently facing criminal charges for criminal mischief. I would strongly advise you to step down from your position as HOA president immediately, or we will be forced to pursue further legal action. The room erupted in shouting. Patricia's supporters started yelling at Jennifer and me, while Robert and others defended us. Patricia banged a gavel on the table, trying to restore order. "This meeting is over," Patricia shouted. "Everyone out now. You cannot just end the meeting because you do not like what is being said," Jennifer said calmly. HOA meetings are subject to Arizona open meeting laws, and you are required to allow homeowners to speak. But Patricia had already stormed out, followed by her 2 loyal board members. The remaining 2 board members, a middle-aged couple named Frank and Lisa, looked uncomfortable and unsure of what to do. Frank finally stood up and addressed the room. "Look, I did not sign up for this level of drama when I joined the board. I have been hearing rumors about Patricia's behavior for a while now, but I did not realize how bad it had gotten. If what Mr. Garrison and his attorney are saying is true, and there is video evidence, then Patricia needs to step down and this board needs to fix the damage she has caused." Lisa nodded in agreement. "I second that. I think we need to call an emergency vote to remove Patricia as president and review all recent fines and violations to make sure they were legitimate." The meeting devolved into chaos after that, but at least some progress had been made. 2 of the 5 board members were now openly questioning Patricia's leadership. If we could get one more to switch sides, we could vote her out. Over the next 2 weeks, Jennifer worked behind the scenes, speaking with other board members and gathering support from homeowners who had been victimized by Patricia's abuse. She also continued to pursue the legal case, filing a civil lawsuit against Patricia for harassment, property damage, and abuse of authority. Patricia's criminal trial for the initial vandalism charge was scheduled for early December. Arizona allows for expedited trials on misdemeanor charges, especially when the evidence is clear-cut. I received a subpoena to appear as a witness, along with my video footage. The trial was held in Scottsdale Municipal Court, a modern building with marble floors and security checkpoints. Patricia arrived with her own attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, who immediately tried to get the video evidence excluded on various technical grounds. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Hanson, was not having it. The video was legally obtained on the defendant's property, shows a clear view of the incident in question, and has been properly authenticated, Judge Hanson said, dismissing the defense attorney's motion. "It will be admitted as evidence. Let us proceed." The prosecution, handled by a deputy city attorney named Michael Chen, methodically presented the case. He showed the video footage, which left no doubt about Patricia's guilt. He called me to the witness stand to testify about the damages and the cost of repairs. He also entered into evidence the photographs and receipts documenting everything. Patricia's attorney tried to argue that the vandalism was a neighborly dispute that got out of hand, and that Patricia had not intended to cause significant damage. He painted me as an oversensitive newcomer who had overreacted to minor issues, and that Patricia's actions were a response to my aggressive behavior. So your client's response to a perceived slight was to sneak onto my client's property at 2:30 in the morning and destroy several $100s worth of landscaping. Michael Chen said during his rebuttal, "That is not a neighborly dispute. That is criminal behavior." The trial lasted just under 3 hours. Judge Hanson took a brief recess to review the evidence, then returned with her verdict. "I find the defendant, Patricia Norton, guilty of criminal mischief beyond a reasonable doubt," Judge Hanson said. "The video evidence is clear and compelling. Miss Norton, you deliberately vandalized your neighbor's property in the middle of the night, and then you lied about it to police officers. This behavior is unacceptable. I am sentencing you to 120 hours of community service, 2 years of probation, and restitution to Mr. Garrison in the amount of $550 for the damages caused in this specific incident. You are also ordered to have no contact with Mr. Garrison except as required by necessary HOA business, and even then only through written communication or through other board members. Do you understand?" Patricia's face was pale and pinched. "Yes, Your Honor." "Furthermore, I am recommending that the HOA board consider whether Miss Norton should continue to serve in a leadership capacity, given her criminal conviction. While this court does not have jurisdiction over HOA governance, it would be deeply concerning if someone convicted of vandalizing a homeowner's property were allowed to continue making decisions that affect that homeowner. This court is adjourned." I left the courthouse feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Patricia had been convicted, and the judge had publicly called for her removal from the HOA board. It was not everything I wanted, but it was a significant victory. The other criminal charges for the subsequent acts of vandalism were still pending, but Patricia's attorney reached out to the prosecutor's office and negotiated a plea deal. Patricia would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for the sentences running concurrently rather than consecutively, meaning she would not serve any jail time beyond the night she had already spent locked up. She would, however, have to pay full restitution for all damages, which totaled over $2,000, and her probation would be extended to 3 years. Meanwhile, the HOA situation was coming to a head. Frank and Lisa had been working with Jennifer and several other homeowners to organize a special meeting to vote on Patricia's removal. According to the HOA bylaws, a special meeting could be called by either a majority of the board or by a petition signed by 20% of homeowners. We easily gathered enough signatures, and the meeting was scheduled for mid-December. Patricia tried to fight it, of course. She sent out emails claiming the meeting was illegal and that any votes taken would be invalid. She threatened to sue the other board members for breach of fiduciary duty. She even tried to get a temporary restraining order to stop the meeting from happening, but the judge denied her request. The special meeting was held on a cold Tuesday evening, with even more residents attending than the last contentious gathering. The clubhouse was packed, with people standing along the walls because all the chairs were full. Patricia sat at the head table looking defiant, while Frank and Lisa sat as far away from her as possible. Frank called the meeting to order and explained the purpose of the gathering. We are here tonight to vote on whether to remove Patricia Norton as president of the Riverside Meadows HOA Board of Directors, and potentially to remove her from the board entirely. According to our bylaws, this requires a majority vote of the board members or a 2/3 vote of all homeowners. We have 180 homes in this subdivision, so we would need 120 votes to remove her. This is a witch hunt, Patricia shouted, standing up. I have dedicated years of my life to this community, and this is how you repay me. By listening to a troublemaker who has been here for less than 6 months. Miss Norton, you have been convicted of criminal mischief, Lisa said quietly. You vandalized a homeowner's property multiple times. You abused your authority as president to retaliate against him. How can we trust you to lead this community? Those charges were bogus, and you know it. The video was faked. Patricia, there were multiple videos from multiple incidents, Frank said, and you pleaded guilty to all of them. You cannot stand here and claim they were fake when you literally admitted in court that you did it. Jennifer stood up and addressed the crowd. I want to make sure everyone here understands what happened. Miss Norton, in her capacity as HOA president, targeted my client with baseless fines and violations as retaliation for him reporting her criminal behavior to police. This is a clear abuse of HOA authority. But more than that, Miss Norton's behavior over the past several years has created a hostile environment for many residents. I have spoken with dozens of homeowners who have stories of harassment, excessive fines, and arbitrary rule enforcement. This vote is not just about my client. It is about whether this community wants to continue living under that kind of leadership. The vote was conducted by secret ballot to protect residents from retaliation. Each homeowner was given a slip of paper and asked to vote yes or no on removing Patricia from the board. The ballots were collected and counted by Frank and Lisa, with Jennifer and 2 other neutral homeowners observing to ensure fairness. It took about 40 minutes to count all the ballots. When Frank announced the results, his voice was heavy but firm. Out of 162 homeowners present or represented by proxy, 138 voted yes to remove Patricia Norton from the board of directors. The motion passes. The room erupted in applause, though a handful of Patricia's supporters sat in stony silence. Patricia herself looked like she had been slapped. Her face was pale except for 2 bright spots of red on her cheeks, and her hands were shaking. You will regret this, Patricia said, her voice low and venomous. All of you. This community is going to fall apart without me, and when it does, do not come crying to me to fix it. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door behind her. The remaining board members and Jennifer spent the next hour discussing next steps, including rescinding the improper fines against me, and conducting a full audit of all violations and fines issued over the past 2 years to identify other potentially improper actions. Frank was elected as the new HOA president, and 2 new board members were voted in to fill the seats left vacant by Patricia and one of her supporters who resigned in protest. The new board immediately voted to rescind all fines against me and issued a formal apology for the harassment I had endured. But Patricia was not done yet. 2 days after the special meeting, I woke up to find my mailbox completely destroyed. Someone had taken a baseball bat or something similar to it and smashed it into twisted metal. The entire post had been knocked over, and mail was scattered across my yard. I checked my trail camera footage. Sure enough, Patricia had come by at 3 in the morning and attacked my mailbox with a metal pipe, beating it viciously for a solid 2 minutes before storming off. It was shocking in its violence, and in how clearly it showed Patricia's complete loss of control. I immediately called Officer Martinez and sent her the footage. She came by within an hour, watched the video, and shook her head in disbelief. "This is felony criminal damage now," Officer Martinez said. "Mailboxes are federal property, and destroying one is a federal offense. Plus, this violates her probation from the earlier conviction. She is going to jail." Officer Martinez contacted federal authorities and coordinated with the Scottsdale police to arrest Patricia. They picked her up that afternoon as she was leaving her house. I watched from my window as 2 officers handcuffed her and put her in the back of a patrol car. She was screaming and crying, shouting that I had ruined her life and that this was all my fault. The arrest made the local news. The story of an HOA president arrested for repeatedly vandalizing a homeowner's property was too juicy for the media to ignore. A reporter from the Arizona Republic showed up at my door the next day asking for an interview. I declined, following Jennifer's advice to keep a low profile while the legal proceedings continued. Patricia was charged with federal destruction of mail receptacles, violation of probation, and additional criminal mischief charges. Her attorney tried to negotiate another plea deal, but the prosecutor was not interested. Patricia had already been given one chance and had immediately violated her probation. The federal charges alone carried a potential 3-year prison sentence. The preliminary hearing was held in federal court in Phoenix in early January. I had to testify again, presenting the video evidence of Patricia destroying my mailbox. The federal prosecutor also brought in evidence of Patricia's prior convictions and her pattern of behavior, arguing that she was a danger to the community and unlikely to comply with any further probation. The judge agreed and denied bail, ordering Patricia to remain in custody pending trial. Her attorney filed multiple appeals, but they were all denied. Patricia spent the next 3 months in jail awaiting trial. The trial itself was held in late March. It was a more serious affair than the municipal court proceedings, with a jury and more formal procedures. The evidence was overwhelming. The videos clearly showed Patricia committing the vandalism, and I testified about the ongoing harassment and retaliation. Patricia's defense attorney tried to paint her as a dedicated community volunteer who had suffered a mental breakdown due to stress. He brought in a psychologist who testified that Patricia had been struggling with anxiety and depression, and that her actions were the result of untreated mental illness rather than criminal intent. The prosecution countered that Patricia had shown clear premeditation in her actions, sneaking onto my property in the middle of the night and taking steps to avoid detection. This was not impulsive behavior caused by a mental breakdown. This was calculated harassment. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges. Judge Richardson, the federal judge presiding over the case, did not mince words during sentencing. "Miss Norton, you held a position of trust and authority in your community, and you abused that position to target and harass a neighbor. When that neighbor took legal action to protect himself, you escalated your behavior to include felony-level property destruction. You have shown no remorse and no insight into the severity of your actions. I am sentencing you to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will also pay full restitution to Mr. Garrison for all damages, which the court calculates at $4,200. Patricia was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, crying and protesting that the sentence was too harsh. I felt no satisfaction in seeing her go to prison, only relief that the nightmare was finally over. The civil lawsuit Jennifer had filed proceeded separately, and in May, we reached a settlement. Patricia's homeowner insurance agreed to pay me $25,000 to cover my legal fees, additional damages, and emotional distress. The HOA itself also agreed to pay me $15,000 and to implement new policies to prevent future abuse of authority by board members. The new HOA board, led by Frank, was night and day different from Patricia's regime. They conducted a complete review of all fines and violations issued over the past 3 years and rescinded dozens of them, refunding over $50,000 to various homeowners who had been improperly penalized. They also rewrote the HOA bylaws to include stronger protections for homeowners and clearer procedures for challenging board decisions. Life in Riverside Meadows slowly returned to normal. I replaced my mailbox and replanted my flower beds. My lawn grew back where Patricia had killed it. The neighbors who had supported Patricia quietly stopped talking about it, while those who had been victimized by her thanked me for standing up to her. Robert stopped by one evening in early June with a bottle of wine to celebrate. We sat on my back patio watching the sun set over the Arizona desert. "You did what a lot of us did not have the courage to do," Robert said. "You fought back when most people would have just moved away. This neighborhood is better for it." "I just wanted to live in peace," I said. "I did not ask for any of this. Nobody ever does. But you handled it right. You documented everything, you followed the law, and you did not let her intimidate you. That takes guts." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping wine and enjoying the evening. My phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer letting me know that the settlement check had cleared and that the case was officially closed. I smiled and put the phone away. Riverside Meadows was finally my home, not just a house I owned. The oppressive atmosphere that Patricia had created was gone, replaced by a genuine sense of community. Neighbors actually talked to each other now without fear of being reported for imaginary violations. Kids played in the streets again. People decorated for holidays without worrying about arbitrary rules. I kept the trail cameras up, just in case, but they mostly just captured footage of rabbits and the occasional coyote wandering through my yard at night. The only drama now was the ongoing debate over whether the HOA should install a new playground in the common area, which was a much more pleasant kind of problem to have. Patricia served 14 months of her 18-month sentence and was released early for good behavior. By then, she had sold her house in Riverside Meadows and moved out of state. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had relocated to somewhere in Nevada, far away from the community she had once ruled with an iron fist. I never saw her again, and I was perfectly fine with that. The whole experience had taught me a lot about standing up for myself, the importance of documentation, and the value of a good attorney. It had also taught me that even in the most ordinary suburban neighborhood, there could be extraordinary conflict, and that sometimes the only way to achieve peace was to fight for it. My flower beds bloomed beautifully that summer, a riot of colors and life that served as a constant reminder of where this all had started. Every time I looked at those flowers, I remembered watching Patricia destroy the original plants and the long journey from that moment to where I was now. It had been expensive, stressful, and exhausting, but in the end, justice had been served. The Riverside Meadows HOA became something of a model for other subdivisions dealing with similar issues. Jennifer used my case as an example in several presentations to homeowner groups, and the Arizona legislature even passed new laws strengthening protections against HOA abuse of authority. My story had become bigger than just one conflict between neighbors. It had helped change the system, at least a little bit. As I sit here now, 2 years after that first incident with the begonias, I can honestly say I love my home and my neighborhood. The house is worth more than I paid for it. My relationship with my neighbors is great, and the HOA is functional without being oppressive. Frank stepped down as president after 2 years, and Lisa took over. She is doing a great job, focused on actual community improvement rather than petty rule enforcement. I still get the occasional violation notice, but they are legitimate now. When I accidentally left my garage door open overnight, I got a polite reminder that it was a security risk and against the rules. I thanked the board member who sent it, closed my garage door, and that was the end of it. No fines, no threats, no drama. That is how an HOA is supposed to work. It is supposed to maintain property values and community standards, not serve as a weapon for power-hungry tyrants to terrorize their neighbors. It took a criminal conviction and a federal prison sentence to teach that lesson, but at least the lesson was learned. My trail cameras are still up, still recording, still watching. I review the footage occasionally, mostly just to see what wildlife has passed through. But they are also there as insurance, as a reminder that I will always be ready to defend my property and my rights if I need to. I hope I never have to use them for that purpose again, but if I do, I will not hesitate, because that is what I learned from the whole Patricia Norton situation. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to stand up to them with every legal tool at your disposal. Sometimes you have to be willing to fight, to spend money on lawyers, to go to court, to endure the stress and the conflict. It is not pleasant, but it is necessary, and in the end it was worth it. Every penny I spent, every hour of sleep I lost, every moment of stress and anger was worth it to live in a community where people are treated with respect and fairness. That is not too much to ask, and it is certainly worth fighting for. So if you find yourself in a similar situation, whether it is an abusive HOA president or any other kind of bully with a little bit of power, my advice is simple. Document everything, know your rights, get a good lawyer, and do not back down. The system is not perfect, but it can work if you are willing to use it, and maybe invest in a good trail camera system. You never know when you might need it.